Let's start on gun control laws and do they work. Are you aware of any serious empirical basis for the proposition that significantly restricting the rights of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms actually results in reducing violent crime?
Sir, violent crime is down substantially from where it was. I think that is in part to vigorous enforcement, getting guns out of the hands of violent criminals. I don't know that we're ever going to stop violent crime. Unfortunately, the business in which I work will always be necessary. What we're trying to do is increase the barriers to the commission of that violent crime, make it more difficult for offenders to get the firearms in the first place.
Mr. Hayfield, let me point out a couple of things. Number one, your statement that violent crime is down is a statement about national trends, and you are right, and I agree that vigorous enforcement of criminal laws targeting violent criminals, that works. The question about stripping the rights of law-abiding citizens, however, the only way to ascertain that is to engage in a comparative analysis of those jurisdictions that have done so versus those jurisdictions that have not. For example, if you look at cities, of the top 6 cities with murder rates, Detroit, sadly, in 2001, topped the list with 48 murders per 100,000 people. Baltimore, Maryland was second with 31 murders per 100,000 people. Philadelphia, third with 21 murders per 100,000 people. Memphis, Tennessee, the only one of the top 6 without especially vigorous gun control laws, is fourth with 18 murders per 100,000 people. Washington, D.C. is fifth with 18 murders per 100,000 people. And Chicago, Illinois is sixth with 16 murders per 100,000 people. 5 of the 6 cities with the highest murder rates are among those cities with the strictest gun control. If you contrast that to cities that do not have strict gun control, for example, my hometown of Houston, where there are 9 murders per 100,000 people, that is less than a quarter what Detroit suffers under. Or if you look at other cities in my home state of Texas, San Antonio has 7 murders per 100,000 people. Austin has 4 murders per 100,000 people. El Paso has 2 murders per 100,000 people. That means Detroit, the murder rate is 24 times higher than it is in El Paso. And I would also point out the argument that you and the chairman were discussing about cities such as Chicago not being isolated islands, that there are places elsewhere in the country where people can legally purchase firearms. None of those cities I discussed, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, El Paso, are isolated islands. Indeed, in the entire state you can purchase firearms. And what we see in terms of the murder rates is the murder rates are consistently lower. So my question to you, it is not your subjective belief, but are you aware of any empirical data? Every one of us wants to reduce murder rates. My question to you is there any empirical basis for saying stripping the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens would result in decreasing murder rates rather than increasing them, which unfortunately is the pattern that I think we've seen?
Senator Cruz, let me start answering your question by thanking you and this committee for expanding our discussion on guns beyond the mass shooting to the urban violence. I have spent my career working on urban violence issues in relative obscurity, and the fact that we're having this discussion about urban violence is much appreciated by those of us who work on the line. My career working on this issue is shown me that there is no single factor that drives this. This is a complicated problem. It's a factor of educational opportunity, economic opportunity, health care. It's a comprehensive situation that breeds violence. So to tie gun ownership or restrictive or permissive gun laws to a murder rate, I think isolates one factor.
Mr. Heafy, with respect, if I could stop because my time is running out, I'll just point out for the record that twice, given the opportunity to answer, is there any empirical basis for the proposition that strict gun control would reduce violence? Twice you have not been able to give an example of that.